Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about samples. We're on page 12 of the notes, and we're going to briefly give an introduction to them, why they're important. Well, first off, we've been working with simulations, and to run a simulation, we had to know something about the population, the group of interest. And what we had to know was a parameter or an estimate of the parameter. For instance, when we ran the oil well simulation, we needed to know the percentage of the time that we expected to strike oil. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, we often don't know anything about the population. Like if you're sick, we don't know the percentage of deformed blood cells in your body. We don't know what percent of the population supports a particular candidate until we collect a sample. So we can't use a simulation in those instances, because simulations do not allow us to test whether or not a claimed percentage of success is correct is another reason. If we say that 42% support a particular candidate, we have to assume that that's true when we run a simulation. We're not testing to see whether it's really 42% or whether it's some other percentage part. So the question is, what do we do when we don't know a population parameter? And conducting a census, in other words, and remember, a census is when we talk to every person in the population or everything in the population. So conducting a census is not appropriate. What do we do? Well, the answer is we take a sample. So what is a sample? And a sample is just merely a subset of the population. It's just a smaller part of the population. It's not the whole population. So the key thing about a sample is what makes a good one. So let's consider this question. If I wanted to suggestions for a theme song for this year's Reagan students, and instead of performing a census and asking all of the students at Reagan, which might be very difficult to do, for their suggestions, I could take a sample or a subset of Reagan students. So since a sample is a subset of the population, there are several ways I can go about finding that subset. I could ask 25 students sitting together in a lunchroom, or I could ask the freshman advisory. And how would y'all feel about that? What would be the problem if I asked the freshman advisory? Well, you're right. It didn't represent sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and we're not even sure they're really people when they're freshmen. So that's probably not represented. Your 25 friends at the lunchroom are likely to have the same ideas as you are. I could go to the teacher's lounge, and I'm sure the teachers would be happy to give you some idea, or maybe the PTA moms, the Stone Up moms might be a good way. And the answer is no, they're not representative. None of those are great ways. They're not representative. So what I'm trying to tell you is a good sample has to represent the population. So basically at Reagan, I would need to make sure that my sample represented some freshmen, some sophomores, some juniors, and some seniors, some males, some females. Think about this. A good sample represents the entire population. And so I want you to consider the picture, this image. If you turn your head and look out the rear window or the rear windshield of a car, you see an image, all right? I don't know what that's a picture of. It could be cars behind you or whatever, but you're looking out and you see something. But if I go to the rear view mirror, I get a subset of that. It's just a smaller image. Some of the details may have gone away because it's so much smaller, but it looks exactly like the window. That's what a good sample is. A good sample looks like the population. While this all seems obvious that a good sample would look like the population, it's not as easy to carry out as you might think. So going back to this, if you don't believe me, let's go back and consider the theme song for Reagan. And who would you choose to make that pick? And it's like, oh my goodness, it would be difficult to do that. And so that's what make sure that when you collect a sample, it looks like the population. So in summary, a sample is a proportion of a population which is studied to draw conclusions about the characteristics of the whole population. A sample must be representative of the population to be useful. We can take samples that are not useful, and that's done all the time. And no conclusion should be drawn from poorly collected data or badly designed experiments or designs. Please highlight this. If you have a bad sample, then you really shouldn't make any conclusions because the data is poorly collected. All right. In the next video, we're going to talk about those bad samples. Thank you.